Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wayne Mitchell, and I have the privilege of being President and CEO of the Nacogdoches County Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank all of you for attending today. Thank our sponsors again. It's my honor to introduce our featured speaker today and the gentleman who has agreed to be our interviewer today. And he's no stranger to any of us. It's Dr. Miles McCall. Miles is an innovative professional consultant and speaker and has worked in the business and with business organizations in an attempt to impact people by challenging them to discover innovative ways to do business. Prior to joining the bank at Commercial Bank of Texas as Executive Vice President, Miles served for almost 29 years in higher education as a communications professor and was a vice president here at Stephen F. Austin State University. He served in numerous organizations, currently the president of the Nacogdoches Rotary Club. He's been on the Boys and Girls Club as a director and several other organizations, including the JCs, which we share in common. Miles has been married to Jana Baker McCall for almost 39 years, and they have 2 successful adult children and 2 incredible grandchildren, and he'll be our interviewer. Let's welcome Miles McCall. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you the gentleman that Miles will be interviewing today. I met this gentleman, we were trying to figure it out about 15 years ago at a banquet similar to this. I was invited down to speak by a very dear friend of mine who was the CEO of the organization, and just prior to it, she said we were graced with and honored to have a gentleman join us tonight, and she said he'll be speaking just before you, Wayne, and I said that's fine, and the banquet proceeded, and she started with this introduction. It was extraordinary. I realized that I was not the featured guest, and I'm certainly not the featured guest today. I'm going to introduce you to Chris Cassidy, the president and CEO of the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation. 2 weeks ago, they had their groundbreaking ceremony right here in Arlington, Texas, on their $150 million facility, which is designed not only to honor the women and men that sacrificed so much to be awarded the Medal of Honor, but also it will serve, as I understand, as a leadership component as well. And Chris can talk about that in much better ways than I can. He's an extraordinary person with a very interesting background. He attended, first of all, I'll confess to you, he claims that his home is York, Maine, and I'm a Maine boy, so there's at least 2 of us in the room here today, Chris. But Chris went on to after high school, to go to the United States Naval Academy and graduated from there, and at the conclusion became a Navy SEAL. Served in Afghanistan, was awarded 2 Bronze Stars, and his unit was awarded the Presidential Citation for work that they did in Eastern Afghanistan. After returning to the United States, it's my understanding that Chris was invited by the Navy or was interested in the Navy, going on to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Then he got his degree in oceanography, so engineering degree in oceanography. While he was at MIT, I understand that Captain Cassidy was contacted by our friends at NASA, not too far from here, and he was selected as an astronaut in 2004. He's a veteran of 3 space flights and 10 spacewalks. He's flown to the International Space Station aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour and the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. He's accumulated on those 3 missions a total of 377 days in space, which includes his most recent 6-month space flight in 2020. It's my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce you and to welcome a real American hero, Chris Cassidy.
Thank you.
Well, Chris, what I would say is welcome back to NAC, because I know you've spent some time here before, and it's certainly good to have you here, and we'll get into that in a minute. And, trust me, there are people out here that are going, ooh, ah, an astronaut, but those same people are going, why is Miles up there? And it's really simple. We have an astronaut and a space cadet. This is going to work out well. So, I want to talk to you a little bit today. We have a bunch of political leaders in the room, and really that's what this is about, is leading not just the state but the country. And I'm kind of a leadership junkie. And, here sits a guy next to me that had, a full career in the military, a full career as an astronaut, and now you're on, 2.2. You got a third career. And I want to talk a little bit about how you developed as a leadership character through those things. And like we were talking earlier, and I know that, obviously you went to a prep school, you must have had military on the mind early on, and I think that when it was time to go to the academy, it wasn't just like you got a letter and got to go. I think it was a little rough for you. So talk a little bit about how you started your military career.
Yeah, that's an interesting story, and I appreciate you asking, because I came from a family that, much like everyone, I didn't have access to anybody in the military. And in fact, I remember watching the Army-Navy football game with my dad and my brother, and seeing these sharp-looking men and women march onto the field, and I got inspired by that. And some of you in the audience remember the guidance counselor's office, where you go down, you have a big, giant, thick book, and you look through that, and you stumble across places that kind of meet your criteria. And that's what drew me to the Naval Academy, and I realized it was free, and that was a huge part of it, and I didn't mind being in the Navy afterwards. But so I applied to the congressional path, and went to the interview in Augusta, Maine, and they said, "Oh, good job, Chris, we got you from here, and we'll take care of it." And I was like, "Okay, nothing else required of me?" Like, "Nope, we got it, son." So that was the fall of my senior year in high school, and then in the spring of my senior year in high school, everybody's getting the information, big envelope, the little envelope, if you get in or not. And I heard nothing from the Naval Academy. And so I called the admissions office and talked to the woman on the phone, and she said, "What's your name? I hear her rummaging through files. Can you spell it? Rummaging through files. What's your social security number? We have nothing on you. We don't even know who you are." And so as luck would have it, my friend's dad was taking a business trip from Maine to Washington, D.C. like the next week, because it was our spring vacation, and we had planned to join each other together, join his dad. And one day that week, I took an afternoon, went over to the academy, went to the admissions office in person, and the woman said, "Oh, you're the kid from Maine. Down the hall on the right, Captain Melillo, he's our guy for that region, go see him." So I walked down the hall, and if any of you know Marine Corps stereotypes, this person was exactly that. Square jaw, perfect hair, uniform like immaculate, shoes you could see your face in, and very intimidating. And but I knew, like, in the 17-year-old brain, I was like, this guy is my only chance. So I told him my story, and I could tell he was looking at me going, "Is this guy a complete nut job? Like, every other kid got their application in on time, how come he didn't?" And our interaction lasted 5 or 6 minutes, maybe 7 at the max, and he sent me on my way. I drove back to Maine that thinking, okay, well, at least I tried. He called me the next week and said, I was in class, they paged me to come for a phone call, and they said, the secretary said, "Somebody from the Navy." I answer. He said, "Hey, I can get you into the Naval Academy prep school, but you got to tell me right now if you want it or not." And without hesitation, I said, "Yes, sir, I'd love it." I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it was my opportunity. So Captain Melillo allowed me, if it wasn't for Captain Melillo giving me that chance, our 5 minutes of our lives together when I was 18 and he was probably a 32-year-old Marine Corps captain, we wouldn't be talking here today, Miles. I wouldn't be sharing spaceflight stories. I wouldn't be sharing stories about Afghanistan. None of that would have been true if he didn't give me that opportunity. And I love to share that story because any one of us, especially in this room with these people, any one of us can be Captain Melillo for somebody else. That's right. You just never know when it is that time for you to receive or you to give. And to close the loop on that story, Peggy had heard me say this story hundreds of times. And before my last launch in 2020, we had a gathering for friends and family. And she said, "What are you going to say?" I'm like, "I don't know what I'm going to say." She said, "Tell the Captain Malillo story." I didn't know why she was getting at it, but she had contacted him
Oh, that's neat.
without me knowing, invited him to this thing. So now 30 years later, I finally got to see him and hug him and shake his hand and say, "Thank you very much, sir, for your blessing."
That's neat. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you've got a super impressive academic background as you got ready for that military career and then the transition into being an astronaut. Now, I'm most impressed with one particular degree, and it's not yours. It's the one your son got about 2 years ago.
Right here from SFA.
Yeah, how about that,
Yeah.
man?
Kinesiology graduate here at SFA in 2020.
Every generation, we just keep getting smarter. I like that. That's good. But, you know, when you were in the military, I mean, you're very decorated. You have bronze medals. You've had experience, presidential citation for your unit. You know, clearly a super successful military career. And, you know, tell me a little bit about what you take away from that you think sets you up for future endeavors like being an astronaut or your new job.
Yeah. Stories are the things that resonate with all of us, and I have one particular one about leadership that I think you guys will enjoy. Our unit at SEAL Team 3, where I was assigned, was responsible for the Middle East, and we were getting ready for a normal 6-month deployment around Thanksgiving time of 2001 when all that happened, and we deployed early right after September 11th. And we found ourselves in Kandahar and doing operations there on the eastern border. And one particular mission, we were given the tasking to go to this cave complex and sort through it and find out what was there. We knew that Tora Bora, if you remember that place, it fed into this cave region, and that was known to have ammunition and harboring safe haven for Al-Qaeda and Taliban. So we were given this mission tasking. We had a couple days, 48 hours or so, to pull together the plan. And you guys can picture like this green, kind of musty smelling army tent with one light bulb hanging in the middle and a sand table up at the front where we did our planning. And we were pretty much hunkered down in this tent for the whole time leading up to the mission briefing. And my boss at the time was this guy named Captain Harwood. He went on to be an admiral, but he's super, super mean and not a pleasant person. Big G.I. Joe scar on his face, and he was just known to be a hard person to brief to. So we did our homework as a unit and really felt like we had the plan together, coordinating with other units and helicopters and ground forces and all these things. So it came time to do the briefing, give the briefing to him. He had a few kind of easy questions, I thought, and we had the answers, and we had the contingency plans already thought, and he said, "Okay, all right, go do the mission." So we thought that was great. And everybody leaves the tent. I'm the last person out of the tent, and gather up the maps and things and kind of make my way to the exit of the tent. And I realized that there's just a handful, like 30, 40 minutes till I have to be on the helicopter. And I got to eat. I got to pee. I got to do number 2. I got to get my gear. I've got a series of very important things to do before I get on this helicopter. And so I'll take care of the bathroom first. And I walk out of the tent and I make my way to the bathroom. And you could just use like little red lens flashlights at that time in Afghanistan. We didn't want to use white lights because then the people would know where you were. Enemy could see you. And the bathroom was a trench dug in the ground with 2 4x4 posts that you build a deck out of and 3 tires on those posts and then sheets of plywood around this pit. And so I turned the corner, excited to take care of 2 of the items on my checklist, and my flashlight illuminates a pair of boots, and then a pair of naked shins, and then Captain Harwood's face. He's excited to do the same thing, and he's sitting on the middle tire. Here's me like, "Are you kidding me, sir?" "Sir, can I join?" Yeah, Cassidy, have a seat. So I drop trow, I sit down, our knees are kind of awkwardly touching. There's like one thing of mostly used toilet paper that he's trying to hoard. And it seemed like this eternity awkward situation. And then all of a sudden he goes, "Hey, you know what I expect of you? I expect you to make good decisions and bring the guys home safely. And like right then and there, in that moment, very vulnerable time, and I wasn't really trying to process it, but afterwards I realized the whole reason the United States government was giving me a paycheck that day and every day was not to shoot my gun perfect or run fast. It was to be a leader and make good decisions. And I think that applies to all of us, right? It doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what industry you're in, or military, civilian. It's all about making good decisions and doing the best you can for your organization.
That's cool. Well, we appreciate your service in that category, but that's a third of your life, and there's more to it. And it's kind of weird when I was studying up and visiting with you, and I see you got this. You go to MIT and you get a master's degree in oceanography, and you end up an astronaut. That seems kind of strange, but tell me about that journey and how you ended up into the astronaut program and what you take away from those experiences. There are very few people that have spent as much time, in fact, no one, as much time as you have in space. And so
there's been more people. There's been people who spend longer in space, but yeah.
But you've got a perspective that nobody in this room has because we've never been there.
Well, I'll tell you, Miles, it never was a plan. Like the Captain Malolo thing set it up, and while I was at the Naval Academies when I saw my first SEAL team person and thought, oh, wow, that's kind of cool, and learned about it and did the prerequisites to select that, never thought about NASA. I mean, of course I knew about NASA, but it's like something that other people do. I don't know how the heck you'd be an astronaut. And then while I was in the SEAL teams, I met a gentleman named Bill Shepard, who was the first SEAL to become an astronaut. And it dawned on me that, hey, he went to the Naval Academy, he was in the SEAL teams, I did those things, and I'm about to go to graduate school, so things are lining up similar for me as him, and he was a competitive enough applicant to get selected. Why the heck not me? Why don't I try? And so he kind of told me how it's done, how often they apply, like how you do it, where the forms you fill out, the mechanics of it, and got me a little bit motivated. And I remember I was driving I graduated from MIT, and my next Navy tour was in San Diego, so we had to drive across country, and we swung through Houston to meet Bill Shepard, and it just so happened that it was his last weekend he was in Houston before leaving to go to Kazakhstan to launch for Expedition 1 of the space station, and I got to hang out with him and have a couple beers with him and see their crew before they left. And so that was really what inspired me to apply. I applied one time every 4 years or so we select astronauts. I applied one time in 2000, but I hadn't completed graduate school, except all the experiences on the toilet in Afghanistan hadn't happened yet. So I was a much more well-rounded applicant in 2004 when I got selected.
Yeah. Well, talk to us a little bit about what's it like to be in space for 6 months, and we talked a little bit earlier where your first couple of trips were quick and you were doing a job, but the long length of stay let you have a weekend off and enjoy yourself.
Yeah,
per se.
I mean, spaceflight is so cool, and I wish that I tell people this all the time. I think our world would be better off if everybody had 5 minutes just to look out that window. It kind of just keeps things in perspective. You're looking at Earth as just this colorful blue, green, brown, white thing that is a spaceship for every one of us. But my first mission was on a shuttle, which is a fast-paced 2-week time frame. And I was sharing with you at the table that it was kind of like a business trip for me. It was such a blur. It was my first mission. I was a new guy. I was nervous about screwing it up. And in fact, I'll share you with this story. Here in this community, near and dear about the tragedies that can happen on a shuttle re-entry. And because of that tragedy, and by the way, thank you to the community for helping us collect all the debris. It means a lot to every one of us at NASA, and we thank you sincerely. But because of that, we knew that foam coming off of the orange tank at high speed can have enough energy to poke holes through the thermal protection tiles on the shuttle. And in order to feel at least some level of security that the system is okay, right after launch, subsequent launches, we would take pictures of the orange fuel tank to make sure that the foam is all intact. And if there were chunks of foam missing, then we had to do more detailed inspections to make sure that the vehicle was safe. So that was my first job on my very first mission. As soon as the engine cut off, which is 8.5 minutes of just power, and take my helmet off, take my gloves off, unbuckle my seatbelt, grab a camera, turn around to the window, and take detailed pictures of this external fuel tank. And I had rehearsed it in my head over and over and over, and so I'm doing it on the real day, just as I planned it. And then I had to change the lens out, and at that moment I was just like looking through this narrow thing at an orange thing. And all of a sudden I took the camera down to change the lens out, and I realized I was looking at Europe. And 30-some minutes ago, we were static on the launch pad in Florida. And everybody is taking flights before, and you know it's more than 30 minutes to go from Florida to Europe. But that was my first glimpse of Earth from that perspective, and seeing it go by at 5 miles a second was really quite something. But that first mission, as you mentioned, it was super busy, and I just was focused on being a good astronaut. And then the second and third missions, where I was there for 6 months at a time, then you have more time to sit and reflect and think about things. I made it a point every night while I was brushing my teeth to just do that in front of the window and watch Earth.
That was your kitchen window view,
That was my kitchen window view.
That's incredible. Well, you have a lot of experience, too, spacewalking, being outside of the vessel. Did ever cross your mind there that if something goes wrong, it's a long way home?
Yeah. There's a whole bunch. I could fill an hour with spacewalk stories, but the best analogy I can think of is in terms of the feel you have when you're first spacewalk, or any spacewalk really. If you're up in a high skyscraper and you're looking out the window, you know it's far down there, right? But you've got glass, your feet are secure, there's no wind, you've got a handrail, you feel pretty safe. You know, occasional scared of heights feeling or whatever, but that aside, you feel generally safe. If you go one floor up and now you're outside and your toes are over the edge and there's no handrail and the wind's blowing in your face, it's a completely different experience, right? You're frightened and your brain tells you, go away, get back, be safe. It's kind of the same thing when you're looking out the window of the space station or the space shuttle. You feel generally safe. You're wearing normal clothes. You see you've got your crewmates all around you, and you feel comfortable. As soon as you open that hatch and you just hear the hum of the fan and the occasional talking in your earpiece, and your breathing is accentuated, your heart rate is thumping, and all that's between you and 200 miles below is your thin visor, it's frightening, kind of. And we go around the world every 90 minutes, so 45 of those minutes you're in the bright sun, and 45 of those minutes you're in the pitch dark. And so you never know what it's going to be when you open the hatch. Is it going to be looking into black nothing or some part of Earth below you? And my first one, there was a piece of trash, like a straw from a drink, that had floated out of the trash can, and it was right by my head. I didn't know it. When I popped open the hatch off the hatch seals, and just a tiny little bit of air pressure was left, and that sucked the straw out, and it went like disappearing down into the clouds, and I was so paralyzed. I was like, I don't want to be that straw. But you realize you're not going to fall, and you get comfortable, and then you kind of get on with it. But spacewalks are super fun. They're super rewarding. It's really hard work. You're wearing the suit for the walk itself is like 6.5, 7 hours long, and you have to have it on for about 4 hours before to do this oxygen protocol. So it's a long day, but it's super rewarding because you're out there, you're fixing something that's broken, or you're installing some new piece of equipment. It's my favorite thing to do, yeah.
Well, Chris, now you're on to a new adventure. I mean, literally, the moving truck left Houston the day they drove up here for this, and is somewhere towards Dallas, and they're trying to find out where they're going to live, so they may stay a couple of days until they can figure that out. But you have a new adventure, and that's with the National Medal of Honor Museum. And what's unique about it, and I'd love you to tell the folks about this, it's not just a museum, it's a museum and foundation. And with that comes monument and museum, but also some educational opportunities.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. We're excited to bring a National Museum for the Medal of Honor recipients. There's 66 living recipients actually today. About 20, 25 of them are travelers. You know, the other folks are getting older, except for Woody Williams, who's 98. Last year he did 200 events. He's amazing. But he's 98, and that's our motivation, is to open the door so that every single one of those 66 can enter. But as you said, the foundation is kind of 3 projects in and of itself. The physical museum, which will be in Arlington, kind of right by the AT&T football stadium and Texas Rangers baseball stadium, which will also house the Leadership Institute, and then a monument on the mall in Washington, D.C. If you're Abe Lincoln sitting in his monument, it's kind of off to his left by the Vietnam Memorial. There's like 3 different plots of land there that might be. But the Leadership Institute is the part that we're pretty excited about, with a youth component for K through 12, maybe university interns, and then corporate and adult, typical kind of things that you can do, continuing education or team building and that sort of thing. So that's the whole project.
And you just had the groundbreaking like a week ago or 2? And
the 25th of March, which was Medal of Honor Day, we just had the groundbreaking. A great event, and it was ceremonial, but also real. Like, there's bulldozers moving dirt around right now. So
that's
we're
cool.
excited. Yeah.
Well, I know we would love to be able to visit with you forever, but obviously we had a limited amount of space and time to be able to do this in something that doesn't happen when you're at the space shuttle, probably. But
the time part, not the space part.
Well, but I'm telling you, it's amazing what you've been able to do in 2 careers, and I'm really looking forward to see what you do in this 3rd career, because I think it's going to be tremendous. And when Wayne was introducing you, he said, a true American hero, and I believe Wayne got it right. So let's give our true American hero a round of applause. And I want to invite Mayor Mize up here, and Donna Finley and Ted Smith for a little special presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm actually here to save you, and I'll tell you about that in a minute when the others join me on stage. Let's see, our Suddenlink reps, Jerry, come forward, please.
Hey, Don.
So since you've endured Miles McCall, I'm going to save you from another story from Travis Clardy and do the introduction of the First Lady of House District 11, Judy Clardy, if you'll stand. I do want to remind you that the next session starts at 10 minutes after 1, or when we finish here, down at the theater, so be sure and head back down that way. But we do have with us this afternoon Johnny Moyer and Jerry Oney from Suddenlink, as well as our Lone Star Legislative Summit co-chairs Donna Finley and Ted Smith, and then also Todd Brown. You did make it, the chair of the Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for joining me today as we make this presentation. Captain Cassidy, I'm pleased today to represent the Nacogdoches County Chamber of Commerce as a past board member, as well as the City of Nacogdoches as its mayor. Your service to our country is appreciated both as a decorated Navy SEAL and as a retired NASA chief astronaut. Nacogdoches is very aware of the risk associated with your service as a Navy SEAL, but even more in your service as an astronaut, as you mentioned earlier. As you probably know, Nacogdoches was the epicenter of the Columbia tragedy, and our citizens will not soon forget that day. In appreciation of your service, I'd like to present a check to you for the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation project so that you can continue your mission to honor the men and women who earn the highest award that an American can receive. Thank you for your service, and certainly thank you to both you and Peggy for joining us in Nacogdoches.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned. Thanks for being with us.